All right, we're going to begin this hour with an inside look at a dangerous and violent cult that existed for decades. It's all part of a new docu-series, Born in Synanon, produced by Synanon Studios. It follows one woman and her mother's journey to discover the truth about this experimental 1950s community that turned into a full-blown cult by the 1970s. It's a series that features interviews with former members who share what are deeply personal experiences and never-before-seen footage from inside the group. Synanon disbanded in 1991 after several members were convicted of crimes, including the founder, who admitted to a conspiracy to commit murder. Cassidy Arkin, the executive producer of the series, says she was born into Synanon, but did not understand the full truth of what was going on until she reconnected with former members for this project.
I'm Cassidy, and I was born in a cult.
What?
In a cult?
Synanon is one of the oldest drug and alcoholism rehabilitation centers, long respected and considered enormously successful.
The goal was to try to keep each other clean.
The director of Synanon is Chuck Dieterich.
Everyone in Synanon is better in every possible way.
The place that did not have all the labels that I had suffered.
And I finally felt like I could be myself.
We were building something beautiful, but there was something in the process of making this film that I wasn't prepared for.
Synanon people think everything was good. They don't know.
Chuck started to talk about Synanon as a religion.
Men getting vasectomies became a sign of commitment.
Women were forced to have abortions. Mothers and fathers were stealing children from each other.
Charles Dietrich was placed on 5 years probation for his role in the attempted murder with a rattlesnake.
All we kept hearing is, we're at war against the outsiders.
Something inside me, it was like, could we be a cult?
Nobody is going to mess with us. Nobody.
Wow, wow, wow. Cassidy Arkin, good morning. Thank you very much for being here. You're executive producer of this project. You also grew up in Synanon. Before we get into the problems, I want to hear about the beauty of it. That's your word.
Yeah.
What attracted people to it in the first place? Could you talk about that just to kick us off?
Yeah, I mean, you know, for me, Synanon was very much a place of just magic and beauty and music. The culture was just unlike anything that I had ever experienced after leaving Synanon. In terms of, that was part of the inspiration of wanting to tell my story, because so much of the stories that I'd been told was something I didn't relate with when it came to Synanon.
So you were born in Synanon, your parents were members, you left when you were 6. What do you remember about those early years?
You know, Synanon has been a part of my life since the day, you know, since I was born there. It's hard to forget. But I remember, you know, waking up in the mornings and being with my peers. I remember having shaved heads and wanting to be like other kids on the outside who had long hair. I remember the Synanon prayer. I remember the marching and the overalls. I remember the wire, and I also remember the hard and tough moments of the regiments and the changes that were happening as we started to grow up, because the culture of Synanon was always changing.
Yeah, because Cassie, it started as an organization to help drug-addicted people. That was the intention. Correct. And for a while it did that. When did it make the switch?
You know, it was a slow progression, but Synanon, as it became more powerful and more popular and people started to come in, there was this group of people who were called squares, and the squares were people who were non-addicted members.
Yes.
And they
were
realized
trying to help others, yeah.
They were trying to help others, and they realized they could make a change too. And the community that they started to come in and out and to play the game in started.
When you say the game, what does that mean? Because there was a lot in the doc about playing the game.
The game was like the engine of Synanon. It was, in today's culture, was like a cipher. So it was where the truth was told, where you could sit down in the room and you could speak to people, you could yell at people, you could cuss at people, but you told your truth.
Yes.
And it was one of the most powerful ways of really being able to express yourself and to be honest, but also to make change.
Yeah, at one point they were talking about the diversity. Black and whites could yell and scream at each other, say horrible things to each other, but they were speaking their truth and there was no fighting. And people saw the beauty of that, of being able to do that.
It was like being on LSD without being on LSD. You could be in this space and you'd be going back at each other. And imagine being someone who comes from the 50s and the 60s where segregation, racism, all these different things were a part of our culture, and then you were in a room with philanthropists, politicians, dope fiends, people who had been in prison and had murdered each other, and you were sitting in a room saying things that you were never allowed to say to each other. That racism blocked us out. As a Black multiracial woman, there are things that I'm not allowed to say to people. In Synanon, within the Synanon game, we were able to tell our truth, and we were accepted within that place. And once you were done, you would get up and you'd leave.
The children were separated at birth and raised communally.
Correct.
How did that have a long-term impact on some of those children who became adults?
Well, you have to understand, for me, I was born there. So my understanding of what it meant to be raised in, in a cult or in a utopia it was normal. So,
the village, raised by the villagers.
Right. We had demonstrators who demonstrated life. Our parents would come and go when they'd want to see us. So when you move out to the outside world, you recognize that the way we were raised was very different, and possibly there were things that were not right. I didn't realize until I was much older how bad things had gotten. And that was something during the process of telling this story that was very hard for me, and still is very hard for me to accept.
Yeah, I get it. It's a very compelling story.
It's an amazing story.
Parts,
and part of what I want to leave to tantalize viewers, make them watch the full thing, is that your relationship with your mother is not what I think people would expect. It's just not. I'll leave it at that. Cassidy Arkin, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
That's a good
Born in Synanon is streaming now on Paramount Plus. You're going to want to tune in.